Jack lived in a room that was spacious enough for his needs at 16 by 16 feet. It featured beige carpet covering the length of the room, but that suited him just fine. He didn't require or desire much more. Jack Hebert definitely didn't need the 3,200 square foot house his wife had insisted they buy. Initially, he had objected. With just him, his wife, and their 16-year-old daughter, they simply didn't need that much space. Especially since Deidre would likely move out in just 2 years. She had been talking nonstop about going to Florida State ever since she saw a photo of the campus. But as usual, Jack gave in and made the 25% down payment of $52,500. Then, 2 years after Deidre left, Jacqueline hit him with the usual, "We've grown apart. It's not you, it's me, and this will help us reconnect." He wondered how a 47-year-old woman having a 31-year-old lover was supposed to help them reconnect. But this time, to Jacqueline's surprise, Jack didn't give in. He didn't just agree. "You'll end up with nothing," she screamed, her normally pretty face contorted in anger when he told her he was moving out. "That's fine. At least I won't end up with an old woman," he said, finishing packing his suitcase. Miller's Electronics sold him the equipment. It was easy to hide them around the large house. Jacqueline wasn't very meticulous with cleaning or observant of her surroundings. He found out Jacqueline's lover was a teacher at Baylor Lake High School. That's where they met. Brian taught English, and Jacqueline was the librarian. Jacqueline and Brian thought Jack should go along with their plan. They'd have their affair. Then Brian would return to his wife, and Jacqueline would return to her husband. But Jack Hebert didn't become the head accountant for St. Elizabeth Public Utilities by being careless. He earned that position through careful and meticulous work. As planned, Brian and Jacqueline went to Sweet Peas for their fried catfish dinner that night. Brian's parents happened to be there, seated at a table. Brian awkwardly introduced Jacqueline as a colleague. "So, where's Michelle?" Brian's mother asked directly. She's at home with the girls," Brian stumbled. "Yes, she mentioned that," his father interjected. "Said you had some kind of parents-teachers conference or something tonight." Yeah, well, we do, but we took a little break to grab a bite," Brian stammered. Both of Brian's parents replied skeptically, clearly not buying his excuse. After a quiet dinner, the once affectionate couple went to Foxtrot's lounge for some dancing. Jacqueline loved dancing, but Jack didn't enjoy it much, considering himself clumsy on the dance floor. At Foxtrot's, Jacqueline's mother and stepfather were dancing. "Yes, dear, your husband slipped Roger a couple $100 to bring me here for dancing and drinks," her mother chuckled. Then she glanced at Brian and raised an eyebrow. "But, what are you doing here?" she asked Jacqueline. Well, Jack isn't really into dancing, so..." Jacqueline trailed off. "Come on, Monique, they're playing our song," Roger insisted. "That's not our song, you old goof," Monique laughed, letting Roger lead her back onto the dance floor. But Jacqueline was determined to proceed with her affair, if only to defy her uptight husband and salvage her evening. Brian didn't mind. The dinner and dancing had just been a means to an end for him. "Wow, nice house," Brian whistled as he pulled up to the South Shore Baylor Lake home. "Thank you," Jacqueline said with a coy smile. They entered the house, Brian giving Jacqueline's backside a playful squeeze. "Hello, Brian," Michelle greeted from the living room couch. What? What are you doing here?" Brian nearly shouted. "Oh, I thought I'd show your wife and daughters where you'd be living," Jack Hebert said, entering the room with a box of his belongings. "Hi, Jacqueline. I just came by to pick up a few more things." "I already told you." "Yeah," Michelle said, her voice tight. "I told you after Stacy. I told you that's it." The pregnant woman struggled out of the soft couch, walked over to Brian, and slapped him hard across the face. "Well, looks like you all have a lot to talk about, so I'll be on my way," Jack smiled. "The girls really enjoy the swimming pool." "You a hole?" Jacqueline snarled at Jack as he walked away. "By the way, you owe Danny $12 for babysitting Mealy and Mandy tonight," Jack added, pointing to the neighbor girl playing with the girls in the pool. Then he left the house. They had almost $84,000 in equity in the house. Jacqueline screamed, cried, and begged Jack for forgiveness. She couldn't bear to lose the house or the nearly $17,000 worth of furniture she'd bought. Her new Mercedes-Benz still had 3 years left on the loan. Jacqueline pleaded and cried for Jack to forgive her. She knew she couldn't afford the car on her own salary, and she nearly fainted when Parker Johnson, her lawyer, delivered the news. Jacqueline would be responsible for half of Deidre's tuition and living expenses for as long as she was in college. She also struggled to make ends meet on the salary of a public school librarian. Oh, no, honey, Monique chuckled dryly when Jacqueline suggested moving in with them. But it's just until I can, Jacqueline protested. Honey, it's a two-bedroom condo, Roger pointed out. I am so thankful your father isn't here to see this, Monique remarked. She gave her daughter a pointed look. Remember? Monique prompted. You brought that Jack Hebert boy home, and your father warned you that he was trouble. He'd be shocked to see how wrong he was. Their eldest, John Jr., called his dad. Dad, Mom's asking if she can stay here, JJ said. Son, if you've got the space, then of course let her stay, Jack replied. Well, it's just, I don't want any trouble, JJ admitted. Son, that woman changed your diapers, took care of you, fed you all those years. If you have the space, give it to her, Jack insisted. Love you, Dad, JJ said. Michelle Melançon kept her word. She didn't forgive Brian for his attempted affair. Brian found it impossible to live on half his salary and ended up moving back in with his parents. At least this arrangement allowed Brian's parents to spend plenty of time with Amelia and Amanda, their two granddaughters. When Michelle had her baby, Barry Melançon, named after her father, they got to see him often too. Barry? I thought we were naming him after me, Brian complained. We were, Michelle snapped. But your little Johnson made sure there's no we anymore. Jack initially planned to stay in the apartment temporarily, but he grew to enjoy not spending hours on chores like cutting grass, raking leaves, mulching gardens, planting flowers, or vacuuming the pool. He also discovered he liked not having to change wallpaper, paint spare bedrooms, or replace old carpets. Cleaning out the garage, attic, and tool shed was another task he didn't miss. Jack kept his furnishings minimalistic. He developed a passion for cooking. Jacqueline used to complain about his mess in the kitchen, but here he had to choose between microwaving endless frozen dinners or learning to cook. He chose the latter and enjoyed it. One evening, driving home with a new recipe for blackened chicken, he noticed a colorful building out of the corner of his eye. Jack had driven past the same building every day without really noticing it. Why he chose to glance over at that moment was a mystery to him. The curtains were drawn back, revealing a plate glass window labeled Kizzy's School of Dance. Inside, 7 couples were gracefully twirling and gliding. A car horn snapped him out of his trance, prompting Jack to turn into the building's parking lot. He stayed in his car, captivated by the sight. An attractive young woman with a radiant smile on her face demonstrated basic dance moves to her students, then encouraged them to practice. Even without hearing the music, Jack imagined the fluid motions and melodies filling his mind as the dancers moved. As the class ended, some couples lingered to chat, while others headed to their cars in the twilight. Jack made a spur-of-the-moment decision and stepped out of his car. Hi, can I help you? The young instructor asked, breaking away from an older couple. Yeah, do you teach singles? I'm not part of a couple, but watching them dance was beautiful, Jack stammered awkwardly, questioning why he was even there. Kizzy smiled warmly and took his nervous hands in hers. Boy, are you in luck today, she assured him. Okay, Jack agreed reluctantly. Come on, let's see what we can do, Kizzy said, guiding him to the front desk. He signed up for her 12-week program and committed to attending on Wednesday nights. 6 o'clock, and I'll introduce you to your dance partner, Kizzy said, handing him his receipt. This really is my lucky day, Jack grinned. Later that evening, as he cooked dinner, Jack found himself humming the music that had played in his head while watching the dancers. Jack first met Jacqueline Adams at Cabrini High School. Her family had recently moved from Stepping Stone, Louisiana, so that her father could work at the Baggett mattress factory. She was attractive, but not notably standout among the other beauties at Cabrini High School. Jack Hebert was far from standing out among the elite at Cabrini High School. He wasn't particularly good-looking, wealthy, or athletic. He didn't own a nice car, didn't have a poetic soul, and couldn't dance. But he was intelligent. After being overlooked by the popular crowd at Cabrini High School for a few weeks, Jacqueline Adams was thrilled when Jack Hebert quietly invited her to Jade Garden for Chinese food. When her father dismissed Jack Hebert as a deceitful person, Jack gained some respect in Jacqueline's eyes. Cabrini held an autumn formal, and Jacqueline expected Jack to ask her. As the event neared, she finally asked him when he planned to invite her. I can't dance, he confessed to her, so she went with Joe Manzella instead, and suddenly Jacqueline and Joe became a couple. Jack felt a bit disappointed and hurt, but he was also practical. They were both 18 and free to date anyone they wanted. In a few months, he would attend the University of Southwestern Louisiana in Lafayette, while Jacqueline could go wherever she wanted, likely never crossing paths again. But Joe's smirk did irritate Jack. "Hey, Hebert, how's it going?" Joe teased. "Oh, going well, Manzella. And how's Gina?" Jack replied, referring to Joe's older sister known for her promiscuity. Joe was strong, but Jack was clever. When Joe swung at Jack, he ducked, causing Joe to hit the cinder block wall instead. "Ouch, that must hurt," Jack chuckled as Joe stared at his swollen hand in dismay. Jacqueline attempted to make Jack jealous by dating other boys, but eventually admitted defeat and returned to him. She skipped the winter formal and the spring formal because Jack couldn't dance. 29 years later in apartment 2B, Jack was eager to finally learn how to dance. It was Wednesday, and Jack dressed in his burgundy shoes, medium brown suit, light blue shirt, and burgundy tie. Those burgundy shoes were the most comfortable pair he owned. "I could have sworn today was Wednesday," Jill, an administrative assistant from Human Resources, remarked, as Jack walked past her cubicle. "It is Wednesday," Jack replied. "No, Wednesday is navy blue day," the young woman grinned. "You usually wear your blue and gray tie, or the one with the yellow dots." "Not anymore," Jack grinned back, mixing things up a bit. "Is that a new suit?" Rhonda, another accountant, asked. "No, it's his Friday suit," Bill, one of the IT guys, chimed in. "Oh," Rhonda nodded, staring at Jack curiously for a moment before returning to her computer screen. "No, Bill, look. It's stuck on something. I can't get to the next page." If wearing a different suit caused a small stir in the office, Jack leaving 20 minutes early nearly caused a panic. He drove to Tommy's Po' Boys, a small restaurant next to the dance school, and almost ordered his usual ham and cheese with olive dressing. "No, you know what? Give me a large shrimp. There's hot sauce on the table, right?" "Yeah, shrimp and a Coke," Jack ordered. He enjoyed his sandwich thoroughly, checked his watch again, and then walked next door. Nervously sucking on a mint, Jack stood apart from the other patrons, who were all couples. "Great, you're here," Kizzy exclaimed upon spotting Jack. "I'd like you to meet Michelle Melançon, your partner." The last time Jack had seen her, Michelle had been 7, almost 8 months pregnant. All he remembered was that she was a pretty, plump young woman with 2 very pretty little girls, and her face had been blotchy from tears and red with anger. Michelle Melançon stood at 4 feet 11 inches and probably weighed around 170 pounds. Her face was small and round, with a button-like mouth, a short nose, and big brown eyes that were also round. Her bright carrot-orange hair was tightly coiled and kept fairly short. Her breasts were more than a handful. Her belly still carried some baby fat. Her hips were round and her backside was also round. In her snug jeans, her thighs looked thick and round. Michelle's entire appearance was rounded. "Hi, Bubbles," Jack greeted her without thinking, which made her burst into laughter. "Why you call me that?" she chuckled. "I don't know," Jack admitted, blushing slightly as they became the center of attention among the other couples. "It just came to mind." Jack learned that Michelle's parents had paid for 12 weeks of dancing lessons for her as a way to get her out of the house for a couple of hours. When Michelle arrived for her first lesson, Kizzy had no male partners available for her. Michelle didn't mind and sat watching the class, admiring their movements. "Then Kizzy texted me to come here this Wednesday," Michelle bubbled. By the end of the first lesson, Jack was covered in sweat. He had to remove his jacket halfway through, and then Michelle reached up, loosened his tie, and unbuttoned the top button of his shirt without thinking. "There, isn't that better?" she asked as they danced another box step. "Relax, Jack. Let the music move you," Kizzy encouraged. When the lesson ended, Michelle eagerly took his hand. "Will you be here next week? Please say you will. I had such a great time," she bubbled. "You had fun? Dancing with an old guy like me?" he teased, picking up his suit jacket. "You're not old," she insisted. "Twice your age," he pointed out. "Yeah, well, still," she shrugged. "I'll be here," he assured her with a smile. While dancing with her, Jack tried to look into her big brown eyes, but sometimes his gaze would drift down to her impressive chest. Whenever he noticed, he quickly redirected his eyes back to hers, and she would smile warmly at him, making him blush. As she exited the building energetically, he couldn't help but admire her curvy backside in those snug jeans. As if sensing his gaze, Michelle turned at the door and flashed him a wide smile. "Did you have fun?" Kizzy asked. "You know what? I really did. I mean, I know I'm not great at it, but I really enjoyed myself," Jack admitted. "First off, you're not bad at all. You're just starting out," another woman chimed in. "And secondly, dancing is all about having fun," her partner added. "Focus on having fun, and the rest will follow." "Couldn't have said it better myself," Kizzy agreed. The next morning, Jack went to his closet intending to grab his Thursday suit, but ended up choosing his Wednesday suit instead. Now I'm completely confused, Jill teased as he walked down the hallway. He just smiled. His cell phone buzzed and he saw it was JJ, so he answered. Dad, you won't believe this, but Shauna... JJ began nervously over the phone. Is your mom driving you crazy? Jack interrupted. Yeah, did you hear the school let her go? JJ asked. No way, Jack exclaimed. Yeah, and that guy Brian too, JJ confirmed. Wow, Jack responded. Any idea why? Did she say? No, I tried asking, but she just said she doesn't want to talk about it, JJ explained. Jack recognized that phrase. Jacqueline used it whenever she was in a tight spot and wanted to avoid discussing something. And with Shauna, the baby is due soon, and JJ continued. All right, I'll talk to her, Jack sighed. They met at Jade Gardens. Jack couldn't help but smile sadly. Clearly, Jacqueline thought it was a date. She had applied heavy makeup and squeezed into a dress with a low neckline. A year ago, Jack might have been excited to see her dressed like that, anticipating a romantic evening. But today, the outfit seemed worn and ill-suited for an older woman not aging gracefully. Well, don't you look nice, he said kindly, taking his seat across from her. Thank you, and you look... Is that a new suit? Jacqueline noticed. Yeah, I wore the wrong one the other day and almost gave everyone a heart attack, Jack chuckled. Realized I'd become too predictable, so I donated all my old suits to Goodwill and got all new ones. Well, that must be nice, Jacqueline said bitterly. Yes, it is nice, Jack replied cheerfully. The waitress approached and asked if they were ready to order. You know, Jacqueline, I know your usual order by heart. You get the same thing every time, Jack remarked. But I bet you $1,000 you can't guess what I want. She stared at him, trying to think of his usual order. Ready to order? The waitress asked again. She'll have spring rolls and sweet and sour pork, right? Jack said. Right, Jacqueline confirmed. And I'll have sweet iced tea and kung pao chicken with fried rice. Jack finished the order. So, how have you been? Jacqueline inquired. I'm good, Jack replied. Work's going well, got a new place to myself, just mentioned my new suits. Prices have gone up since our last purchase, and Rhonda announced she's pregnant, so I'll need to find a temp. And you? The waitress set down his sweet iced tea, and Jack nodded in thanks. Jacqueline complained about losing her job, living with JJ and his wife, and feeling disliked by Shauna. Deidre was still upset with her, but Penelope and Percy were at least kind to her. But neither of them has any room, she concluded sadly. Well, get your own place, you're an adult, Jack suggested as their food arrived. With what? My good looks? Jacqueline snapped. I just lost my job, remember? Well, if you can't use your looks, try your charming personality, Jack joked. Screw you, Jack, Jacqueline retorted. Let's just eat, Jack said. Seriously, every time I order this, it seems hotter than the last. As Jack ordered a bowl of chocolate ice cream for Jacqueline and Neapolitan for himself, she brought up the idea of getting back together. No way, he grinned, even as she leaned forward, revealing her sagging breasts. But why not? She almost yelled. So I can wait around for the next time you say we've drifted apart, and it's not you, it's me needing excitement, just closeness to strengthen our relationship? Jack asked, spooning some ice cream into his mouth. Jacqueline thought about throwing her ice cream at him and his fancy suit. The waitress returned and dropped the bill on the table. Jack quickly checked it and placed his credit card on the tray. The waitress hurried away without a word. It could have been hormones, Jacqueline suggested. I'm getting older. My periods are becoming irregular. Instead of seeing Dr. Pellier about it, you decide to be with another man, Jack said, signing the bill and leaving a flat 15% tip. But he understood. You were always too busy, and Brian... Jacqueline whined. I was busy with all the stuff you insisted had to be done right then, Jack said, standing up. I was always running around with our daughter. He shook his head sadly. I've heard all these excuses. My fault. Hormones. Brian listened, Jack said. But I haven't heard Jacqueline say she's sorry, or admit it's her fault. But I am sorry, Jacqueline said quickly. JJ and Shauna need that room for their baby, Jack said. So you need to find a nice little apartment or something. St. Elizabeth Courthouse has a program to help you find a job. Use it. Jacqueline burned another bridge. When she got back to JJ and Shauna's small bungalow, she screamed at Shauna, calling her names. Thanks, Dad, JJ said with bitterness in his voice on the phone. Nope. I talked to your mom and told her you guys needed that room for the baby, Jack argued. Whatever she said or did after that, that's her responsibility. Jack caused a stir at St. Elizabeth's Public Utilities when he showed up on Friday. Instead of his usual medium brown suit, he wore khakis and a button-down shirt. But when 5:10 rolled around the next Wednesday, Jack emerged from his office wearing snug blue jeans, a baby blue pullover shirt, and penny loafers, with his suit draped over his shoulder. It sent a mild shockwave through the building. "And you're leaving 30 minutes early?" Rhonda asked. Go, Jack," Garrett from IT cheered. At Tommy's, Jack ordered a fried oyster po' boy and a cola. After finishing, he had to admit that the hot ham and cheese with olive dressing was still his favorite. "Well, hey, you never know until you try," he mused aloud. Michelle awaited him with a wide smile, bounding over to greet him. "That looks way more comfortable than that fussy old suit," she complimented, rubbing his arm. "Hi, Bubbles, you're looking good too," he grinned. She burst into laughter at being called Bubbles. He felt much more relaxed and genuinely enjoyed their lesson. "Well, back to the kids," Michelle said as Kizzy congratulated everyone on a great class. "I'm sure Barry's hungry by now." "Barry? Oh, right, the baby," Jack smiled. "How are the little ones?" "Mealy's been asking why we can't live with Daddy almost all the time now. Mandy's starting to fuss about it too. But that's just because Mealy is, and as long as Barry has a dry diaper and a boob to suck on, he's happy," Michelle confessed. She beamed a big smile when he glanced at her ample chest. "See you next Wednesday, Bubbles," Jack grinned. "I'm going to come up with a nickname for you," Michelle teased. "Yeah, sure. Can't wait," Jack replied. Next, Percy called Jack, complaining about his mother. "Dad, please do something," Percy whined. "She's been here for 2 days, and already Addison's ready to end her. Or me." "What, am I supposed to be the enforcer?" Jack asked. That's exactly what Jacqueline asked him when he called her to tell her to leave Percy's one-bedroom apartment. "My place is only $425 a month." "You can't say you can't afford $425, Jack reasoned with her. "I got fired from my job, Jack. It's hard to rent an apartment with no money." Jacqueline raised her voice. "Jacqueline, we sold the house," Jack reminded her. "We each got a check for $42,000. What happened to all that money?" She didn't answer his question. Instead, she pleaded with him to reconsider reconciliation. "Do you remember what you said to me when I asked if you wanted to go to the Catskills?" Jack reminded her. "My last vacation, I said, hey, why don't we go to the Catskills? We loved it there last time we went. Remember what you said?" "No, you know I don't," she snapped. "But I'm sure you do." "You said, why bother?" "Well, Jacqueline, why bother? Reconciling? Why bother?" Jack said. Penelope gently let her mother know that as much as she loved her, there simply wasn't space for her at her apartment. "And besides that, Mom, you hate dogs. And Samson and Delilah were here first," Penelope added, as her 2 Irish wolfhounds sought her attention. Jill asked as he walked past her cubicle holding his suit. "All right, Jack, where are you headed?" "What's up?" he chuckled. "I don't interrogate you every time you leave." "Yeah, but you're not smiling like that every time either," she grinned. Jack knew that if he spilled the beans to Jill, the whole office would know by morning coffee. They all knew about his divorce from Jacqueline and the reasons behind it. Women were approaching him, calling Jacqueline names and reassuring him not all women were like her. Some men were patting him on the back quietly while others avoided him altogether. "Okay, Jill, but this stays between us," Jack said. "You know I won't spill," Jill promised eagerly, eyes shining with curiosity. "Well, every Wednesday, after my divorce, trying to make ends meet on half of everything," Jack explained. "Yeah, that woman," Jill nodded in agreement. "But anyways, I make some extra cash posing as a male model for the art classes at ULD, Jack whispered. "You do what?" Jill exclaimed, eyes widening in disbelief. "Yeah, University of Louisiana at DeGard," Jack confirmed. "They have these art classes where they pay me $100 to strip down and just stand there. I was so embarrassed the first time. One girl said she used up all her red paint trying to get my blush right. But hey, after that," Jack managed to hold his laughter until he reached his car. He was still giggling when he walked into Kizzy's. "Okay, Jackhammer, what's so funny?" Michelle asked, taking his hand. He blushed, but shared with her what he had told Jill, the office gossip. They both burst into laughter, Michelle covering her mouth with her delicate hand. "Well, I'd definitely pay to paint you," she confessed as Kizzy called the class to order. "Okay, Jackhammer, you ready?" Michelle teased. "Yeah, that's what all the ladies call me," Jack replied, causing Michelle to blush immediately. "I didn't mean it like that," she exclaimed, playfully slapping his arm. "Any issues here?" Kizzy asked with a smile. "Yeah, she just hit me," Jack joked. "You should have heard what he said," Michelle retorted. "I'll come up with a different nickname," Michelle promised as they danced. Sure thing, Bubbles. Jack grinned and spun her around. That's it, keep going, Kizzy encouraged. A few other couples joined in the encouragement, and both Jack and Michelle grinned broadly. Do you want to? Jack stuttered as Kizzy ended the class. Michelle smiled up at him, her smile making him even more nervous, but he pushed through. Would you like to grab a cup of coffee or something? He asked. Can't, Michelle replied. Remember, I'm breastfeeding. Oh, right, I totally forgot, Jack nodded in agreement. But how about a big malt at Clark's? Michelle suggested, taking his hand in hers. Yeah, that sounds great, Jack agreed, smiling through his blush. We'll take your car, Michelle decided. However, when she saw that Jack drove a smart car, she nudged him toward her minivan. I'm not squeezing into one of those, she declared. It's like trying to fit a basketball into a golf ball. Come on, they're bigger than they look, Jack protested, but he got into her minivan. She sent a quick text to her parents letting them know they were stopping at Clark's. Yes, it's a date, she texted back when her mother asked. Before they could make the short drive from Kizzy's School of Dance to Clark's drive-in, Michelle's phone buzzed 8 times. Do you want to answer that? Jack asked. No way, it's my family trying to drive me crazy, she said after glancing at her phone. Michelle got a large chocolate malt, and Jack opted for a vanilla cone dipped in chocolate. So, Jack Rabbit, why did you decide to take up dancing? Michelle asked, as Jack watched the cute waitress skate away, her backside outlined by the familiar red shorts. Jack Rabbit, huh? Jack grinned. Yeah, that's what my lady friends like to call me. Forget it, Michelle laughed as her phone buzzed again. And stop checking out all those girls in shorts, she ordered. Oh, I was just thinking about how good you'd look in them, Jack blurted out before he could stop himself. Before she could respond, a police car pulled into the space next to them. Seriously? Michelle exclaimed as her older brother stepped out of the police car. Is there a problem with your phone? Officer Richard Voisin asked his younger sister. No, I'm ignoring it, just like I'm ignoring you, she snapped. Uh-huh, Richard smirked. Hi, I'm... Jack began to introduce himself. Jonathan Archibald Hebert, Sr., Richard interjected. I ran the tags on your car. Really? Michelle groaned. Can't I just enjoy my malt in peace? Richard affectionately pinched his sister's nose. After what Brian did to you, we can't let just anyone into the family circle without checking them out, Richard said, nodding at Jack. Don't worry about answering your phone, he assured Jack as he started to walk around his car. I've already given everyone the all clear on Jack. I hate you, Michelle yelled at him. Uh-huh, love you too, Richard chuckled, opening his door. You should bring him over on Sunday. Jack chuckled, and a moment later, Michelle joined in. I'm so sorry about that, she said. What an awkward first date, huh? Actually, I think this is turning out to be a great first date, Jack replied. And that's what I'm going to call you, she giggled after taking a big slurp of her malt. Archibald, huh? Archie? Oh, please don't, he protested. Oh, but Archie, she teased. Her phone buzzed a few more times, but she ignored it while they enjoyed their ice cream treats. When she parked next to his car, the only one in the lot at Kizzy's School of Dance, they continued their quiet conversation. Michelle noticed Jack becoming increasingly nervous. You trying to kiss me, Archie? She finally asked. Yeah, I want to, he admitted. She grabbed his shirt front and kissed him. Give me your phone number. You're coming over for Sunday dinner, whether you like it or not, she insisted after they pulled apart. 31 messages? She exclaimed, checking her phone again. Seriously? After another long kiss, Jack stepped out of her car, waved, and drove off, leaving her to deal with 31 text messages. Jack entered the building, and Whitney, the friendly but somewhat naive receptionist at the lobby desk, blushed as she greeted him. Up on the 3rd floor, some women blushed too, while others avoided making eye contact. A few of the men chuckled, and Garrett flashed him a thumbs up. Then Jack recalled what he had joked about with Jill the night before, and couldn't help but burst out laughing. You said you wouldn't tell anyone, huh? He teased Jill when he spotted her in the break room. Oh, but I didn't, she protested, looking guilty. That Sunday, he passed inspection, especially since he wore his Saints pullover shirt with khakis. And look at that, the man knows how to tuck in his shirt, Michelle's father, Barry Voisin, remarked to Michelle's older brother. Mr. Archie, can we go swimming at your house again? Asked Amelia, Mealy Melançon. Well, I'm sorry, sweetheart, but I don't live in that house anymore, Jack explained. Then he remembered his apartment complex did have a swimming pool. Often, he would return home from work to find various people lounging around the pool. But my apartment does have a swimming pool, he offered. Can we go swimming at your apartment? Mandy asked eagerly. Sure thing, Jack agreed. Do you really want to see this body in a bathing suit? Michelle whispered mischievously. Absolutely, Jack replied with enthusiasm. Aw, Chi, you're so naughty, she laughed aloud. He passed inspection again, especially when he told Barry and Richard that he usually went to Red's sports bar to watch the Saints play. Oh man, they used to have the hottest wings. I swear, your tongue would go numb after eating them. Do they still have those wings? Barry inquired. Yes, both Jack and Richard confirmed. If anyone found it a bit odd that Michelle's boyfriend was 20 years older than her, no one mentioned it. Jack and Barry both reached for the final biscuit to mop up the last of the rice, gravy, and smothered steak. Marie Voisin playfully tapped Barry's knuckles with her spoon. He's our guest. You give him that biscuit, she instructed her husband. But I really need that biscuit, Barry complained, patting his full belly. I'm about to waste away here. Well, I wouldn't want that to happen, Jack chuckled. Go ahead and take it. No, you look hungrier than me, Barry grinned broadly. All right then, see you on Wednesday, Jack said as he said goodbye to Michelle's 6 siblings, Mealy and Mandy, her parents, and everyone else. Do I have to wait that long? Michelle asked. Well, no, we can go to side by side and then foxtrots. We've practiced enough, right? Jack suggested. Ooh, side by side, Marie chimed in. Barry, why don't you ever take me to side by side? Because I'm cheap, Barry joked. We're taking my van. I'm not getting in that tiny thing you call a car, Michelle teased, wrinkling her nose at Jack's smart car. Oh, come on. That's a Mercedes-Benz, Jack insisted. That's no Mercedes-Benz, Michelle laughed. Yeah, it is. It's made by Mercedes-Benz, Jack explained. They hugged and kissed for as long as they felt comfortable, with Michelle's entire family watching. Jack promised he'd be there at 6:30 the next evening. Jack marveled at how easily he slipped back into the dialect of his youth. His maternal grandparents spoke mostly Cajun French, while his paternal grandparents spoke heavily accented English mixed with Cajun French when they were excited or frustrated. Many dinner table conversations were a blend of both languages. When Henry Jonathan Hebert and Elise Cynthia Arnaud Hebert wanted to keep something from their children's ears, they spoke in Cajun French to each other. Little did they know, their 3 boys understood Cajun French perfectly well. In high school and college, Jack gradually lost his accent. As an administrator at St. Elizabeth's Public Utilities, he made a conscious effort to speak clearly without his Cajun twang. But an afternoon at the Voisin family table brought his heritage right back. He went online, found Side by Side Steakhouse's number, and left a message for a table for 2 at 6:45 the next evening. Even a call from his ex-wife didn't ruin his good mood. Hi, Jack, it's me, she said sweetly. Yeah, I see that, he replied, resisting the urge to slip into a Cajun accent. Jacqueline used to make fun of the accent when his parents couldn't hear. She also criticized their cooking, calling it unhealthy. Grease isn't food no matter what y'all think, she'd sneer. So Jack was careful not to give Jacqueline any more reasons to criticize him. So, how have you been? She asked. I've been all right, you know, Jack said, then cringed. Well, I finally did it. I got myself a little place, Jacqueline said. Oh, that's good to hear, Jack responded. So, I was thinking maybe you'd like to come over? Jacqueline coaxed, turning on the false charm. What? Why? Jack questioned. Oh, you know, see the place. I'll make stuffed bell peppers, your old favorite, remember? Jacqueline said. Jacqueline, I don't think so, Jack declined. And just like that, Jacqueline's forced cheerfulness faded away. She turned whiny and self-pitying, mentioning that none of their children would talk to her anymore. Deidre, my baby, she hung up on me, can you believe it? She sobbed. Well, I'm busy tomorrow, Jack reluctantly replied. How about Wednesday then? Jacqueline quickly suggested, her tears drying up as fast as they had started. No, I've got plans on Wednesday too, Jack said. What are you doing? Jacqueline demanded to know. Jack briefly considered telling her what he'd told Jill. I'm taking a course at school, brushing up on a few things, he said. It wasn't entirely untrue. Over the years, he had taken courses at the University of Louisiana at DeGard to sharpen his skills. He just didn't feel like mentioning that he was refining his dancing skills. Well, how about Tuesday then? She proposed. Yeah, okay, Jack agreed. At 10:30 on Monday morning, a young woman named Lacey called his cell phone to confirm his reservation for 2 at Side by Side Restaurant at 6:45 that evening. We look forward to seeing you, Mr. Hebert, Lacey said cheerfully. Not as much as I do, Jack joked, and Lacey giggled. Michelle also giggled when Jack called her to remind her about their date that evening. Like I'm thinking about anything else, she asked. With a love you, Achi, Michelle ended the call. Jacqueline had not said love you until they had known each other for nearly a year. Even then, it was only in response to Jack's own declaration of love. Jacqueline had never used any terms of endearment with him. The only time she called him honey or baby was when she wanted something. Once again, at 6:30, Jack had to greet Michelle's entire family. Her parents, brothers, sisters, nieces, nephew. She only had one nephew named Richie. Mealy, Mandy, and Barry, who flashed him a toothless grin. Michelle wore a slightly snug dress that clearly was her best outfit bought long ago, likely before she was pregnant with Amelia. Damn, Bubbles, I should have gone home and dressed fancier, Jack commented, though he was already in a sharp black pinstripe suit, crisp white shirt, and a bold red tie. Why? You look good, she replied. Yeah, but not nearly as good as you, he said, making her blush with pride. Why don't you say things like that? Marie asked Barry. Because then I'd have to say it all the time, Barry teased, kissing his wife. Oh, you're fibbing, she laughed, returning his kiss. I'll give you a police escort, Richard joked. Do it and I'll end you, Michelle threatened playfully. Ah, Mr. Hebert, the hostess greeted them at the restaurant. Right this way. Michelle looked around the fancy restaurant in awe. The fanciest place Brian had ever taken her was Casa Ole, a Mexican restaurant. Her menu had no prices, and she asked about it. Sweetheart, it's so you don't worry about what you're ordering, Jack explained quietly, taking her small hand in his. You can get whatever you want. Looking into his warm brown eyes, Michelle felt her heart flutter. I love you, she blurted out suddenly. Her eyes widened and she gasped silently, trying to correct herself. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that because I'm in love with you too, Jack smiled warmly. You are? Michelle gasped. Meanwhile, Jill remarked as Jack exited his office, dressed in his usual Wednesday attire of jeans and a pullover shirt. What a difference a day makes, huh? Huh? Jack responded, curious. Well, yesterday, you looked like you'd lost your best friend when you left here, Jill observed. But tonight, you've got that Wednesday night smile plastered all over your face. Jack grinned even wider and continued on towards the elevator. The previous evening, he had visited his ex-wife's new apartment. Jacqueline had rented a one-bedroom unit that was slightly larger than Jack's, with a neat and tidy environment. The apartment complex was well kept, with no abandoned cars in the parking lot and clean grounds. At the Voisin's home, they bowed their heads for a prayer before the meal began. Since Sunday's lunch, Jack had made a habit of giving thanks before eating. I'm not poisoning you, you know. No need to pray, Jacqueline teased when she noticed him bowing his head. Throughout dinner, Jacqueline continued to complain. She griped about the high rent, the cost of furniture, her boring job at the courthouse, and the noisy neighbors. Must have been some great closeness, Jack muttered to himself. That's all I can think about. It must have been really great. Once again, Jacqueline brought up the idea of getting back together. Did you hear what I said? Jacqueline asked, trying to hide her irritation. Jack finished chewing his casserole, took a sip of his iced tea, and faced her. Why did you cheat on me? He asked directly. What? What does that have to do with... Jacqueline stammered. It has everything to do with it, Jack replied firmly. He placed his napkin on the table. Jacqueline, for whatever reason, you decided to sleep with Brian Melanson. I told you not to do it. I told you I wasn't okay with it. I warned you it would end our marriage. But you went ahead anyway. The only reason it didn't... I messed that up pretty badly, didn't I? I really didn't think, Jacqueline admitted weakly. I know. You really didn't think I would fight back so hard. You really didn't think I would leave or file for divorce. You really didn't think you wouldn't get your way like you always did. Jack sighed. See? You're just as much to blame as I am. You always... Jacqueline started to argue. Jacqueline, I still haven't heard you say you're sorry, he interrupted, standing up. You're not done yet. You still have... Jacqueline protested. I'm done, Jack cut her off, heading toward the door. Don't call me anymore, okay? We have nothing more to say. He stopped at Clark's and ordered a chili cheeseburger and a vanilla malt. I'd be nervous driving around in that thing, his waitress admitted, eyeing his small car. Yeah, but I get 42 miles to the gallon, Jack agreed cheerfully. When he arrived home, he and Michelle exchanged text messages incessantly until 10 o'clock. Good night, Achi, she sent, along with a kissy face. Love you. Good night, he replied. Love you more, came her response. I know, he chuckled back. He laughed when she replied with a smiley face sticking out its tongue. Now it was Wednesday afternoon, and Jack was excited about dancing with Michelle. Whitney blushed deeply, but wished him a good evening. After a hot ham and cheese po' boy with olive dressing and a few dashes of hot sauce, Jack was energized and ready. "Archie!" Michelle exclaimed, bounding over to greet him. "Hi, Bubbles," he smiled, admiring her outfit. "You look good, yeah?" They danced, following Kizzy's instructions, correcting those who needed it, and praising those who did well. When the class ended, Jack bent down and softly kissed Michelle's lips. "So, it's Brian's weekend with the kids," Michelle coyly mentioned. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking I want to make love to you," Jack blurted out. She kissed him back, standing on her tiptoes. "Okay, that sounds good, yeah," she agreed. On Thursday, Jack had a heart-to-heart talk with Barry, Michelle's father. He learned that Michelle's wedding had been rushed and there was no honeymoon, so Jack planned a romantic weekend getaway. And on Friday, he left work at noon. Jack couldn't help but laugh. Jacqueline's Mercedes-Benz was sitting in the lot of the Superior used car lot. They call them pre-owned, but even the salesperson admitted they're used cars. "You know what? Yeah, give me that one," Jack agreed and bought Jacqueline's car. Then he returned to his small apartment and packed his suitcase. His mood soured slightly when he pulled up to the Voisin house and saw Brian Melançon struggling with Barry's car seat and Mandy's car seat. Mealy was already seated in the front. A thought struck Jack. "Here, let me help," he said, taking Barry from Brian. "You get Mandy." "Hi, Mr. Archie," Mealy greeted him. "You're not going to hit me, are you?" Brian asked nervously. "Huh? No, go ahead, get her," Jack reassured him as he quickly secured Barry's car seat. Jack kissed Mealy on the forehead and kissed Mandy, too. "Can I talk to you for a minute? How about Monday night?" Jack asked Brian. "Monday? No, I'm not busy," Brian agreed. Jack then helped Michelle with her suitcase. The 2-hour drive allowed them plenty of time to chat and get to know each other. Michelle shared that Brian had been a friend of her brother Richard's and had always been kind to her. "I mean, I know I'm overweight, but he always says hi and tells me I'm pretty," Michelle said. "Hi, you're pretty," Jack replied. "And because I'm allergic to latex," Michelle added. "I think I know what you're going to say," Jack said with a slight grimace. He had bought a pack of protection, but if Michelle couldn't use latex, they'd have to decide whether to take the risk. Jack hoped, with Michelle looking stunning in her snug pink blouse and khaki shorts, that they'd take the chance. Clearly, Michelle was hoping the same, squeezing his hand frequently. Baton Rouge traffic was as chaotic as ever, and Jack felt relieved when they finally reached Gonzales. Bourbon Street was a new experience for Michelle, who had never been out of Degard, Louisiana. Café du Monde was a delightful treat, and Jack agreed they should eat there every day. As night fell over the city, Michelle took Jack's hand and looked up at him with her big brown eyes. "Let's go back to the room," she suggested. She talked non-stop on the way to the hotel, in the creaky old elevator, and while he struggled with the key card, he pulled her close, hugged her tightly, and then kissed her. "Are you nervous, Bubbles?" Jack asked her softly. "No," Michelle denied, then nodded, burying her head in his chest. "You're about to see me naked and I'm overweight," she admitted. "And you're beautiful too," Jack said. He didn't try to deny that she was overweight. She knew she was 40 to 50 pounds heavier than she wanted to be. Trying to convince her otherwise would have been insincere and dishonest. So, Jack told Michelle the truth. She was beautiful. Regardless of her weight, she was beautiful. He guided her to the bed and gently pushed her down. She sat on the edge, watching as he turned off the room's 2 lamps and closed the curtains tightly. "There," he said, finding her in the darkness and touching her. "Now I can't see you." He kissed her deeply. "But I can feel you," he whispered, running his hand up and down her arm. "And I can feel you," she whispered back. "I love you, Archie." He interrupted their kisses to lift off her blouse. They kissed again. Michelle pulled off his Saints pullover shirt, and they kissed some more. "You're so beautiful, Michelle," he whispered as he unhooked her strong bra. "Why don't I feel like Bubbles?" she asked. "Who knows?" Jack said, and she chuckled. His hands explored her breasts and noticed the effects of breastfeeding. "Sorry," she murmured. "What? Why? You're so hot, Bubbles," Jack protested. Their kisses were full of passion and love. Upon hearing his declaration of love, Michelle eagerly kissed him back, pressing her breasts against him. Then she pushed him onto the bed, climbed on top, and straddled him. Meanwhile, Brian appeared nervous and anxious. Jack ordered coffee with evaporated milk from the counter and then walked over to Brian's table. Hey Brian, how's it going? Jack greeted him, sliding into the bench across from him. Good. I'm good, you? Brian stammered. I'm good too. Got a crock pot of black bean soup waiting for me at home, Jack replied, blowing on his coffee. So, what did you want to talk to me about? Brian brought up the subject. Why did my wife want to cheat on me? Jack blurted out, skipping small talk. Huh? Brian was taken aback. Jack had imagined various scenarios, but his direct question wasn't one of them. Jack swallowed a mouthful of scalding coffee and set down his cup. I gave her everything she asked for. That huge house she wanted? I hated it, but I got it. Her car? She had a good Lincoln, but she had to have a Mercedes-Benz, Jack explained, looking at Brian. I'm just trying to understand. I gave her everything. Never cheated, never mistreated her. And then she decides to have a fling. I'm trying to figure out why. She was feeling old, Brian offered. What? So am I. We're all getting older, Jack protested. Brian raised his hand. You asked why, but you won't hear it if you keep talking, Brian said. They stared at each other silently for a moment. Finally, Jack nodded in agreement. She's getting older, Brian continued. Her youngest is out of the house now, Deidre, right? Deidre, Jack confirmed. She's feeling old, maybe not as desirable, Brian elaborated. He smiled and shrugged. All it took was a compliment like, you look nice today, or your daughter's old enough for college and she was happy, Brian confessed. I always told her she looked good, Jack said angrily. Yes, but coming from you, it's different, Brian explained. You're the husband. It's expected from you, but it doesn't count the same way. Brian finished his coffee and glanced at the counter. Go ahead, Jack said. Get yourself another. Brian got up and returned with a fresh cup. Anyway, she's smiling at me, flirting a little. It's flattering when a younger guy pays attention, Brian continued. He blew on his coffee, then winced when he burned his lips on the hot mug. It's hot, Jack agreed, sipping his own coffee. That's how I ended up with Cindy, the school secretary, Stacy, the chemistry teacher. That's the one Michelle caught me with, Brian confessed. Both men sat silently for a moment. All it takes is a little attention, and then they start complaining about their husband. He ignores them, doesn't take them out, prefers to sit around watching TV, Brian said. He took another sip of coffee, grimacing slightly at the heat. You just got yourself that smart car, Brian recalled. And all I had to do was ask if you were still upset about the Saints losing season, and she started listing all your faults. Brian shrugged. Oh, he bought a new car? How selfish. He doesn't take you dancing? Prefers football? I bet he's not good to you in bed either, is he? Brian mimicked. Forget that I'm busting my ass for her every day, Jack snapped. Most husbands do, Brian admitted, but all I have to do is suggest it's not enough. Jack finished his bitter coffee, thinking to himself more than to Brian. And Michelle fell for you? He muttered. Oh, her? Always the chubby kid? Just had to tell her she was cute, Brian scoffed. Worst mistake. He stopped short, remembering he'd seen Jack outside Michelle's house the previous Friday. As the serpent left the Garden of Eden, he became an English teacher, Jack thought to himself, standing up. He couldn't help but grin. Brian Melanson knew how to charm women, but Michelle had confided in Jack that Brian wasn't great in bed. Michelle had revealed that Brian didn't enjoy giving BJ on her. Jack showed who's the best lover around here, smiled politely, bid Brian goodnight, and exited Jitter's coffee house. Jack drove back to his small apartment, dished out some black bean soup, and added extra hot sauce to spice it up. He and Michelle exchanged text messages throughout the evening. On Tuesday morning, Jack woke up not just with a smile, but also without feeling like a failure or a loser, a feeling that had plagued him for some time. He had carried lingering questions about why Jacqueline had cheated, whether it was her first time and where he had gone wrong as a husband and provider. However, he now saw more clearly that he hadn't failed. While he might have lost focus at times, it wasn't solely his fault. He also realized he had outgrown the bachelor pad he was renting. Epilogue. It was their 12th dance lesson that evening. Jack had enrolled them in 12 more lessons and paid for both his and Michelle's sessions, despite Barry offering to pitch in. Why do we have to go to McDonald's? Mealy asked, holding one of Jack's hands while Mandy held the other. Because they have hamburgers, French fries, and you can get a milkshake. Plus, there's a playground slide. And there's a toy in the box, too, Mandy added. As Jack and Michelle gracefully twirled on the dance floor, their movements fluid and beautiful, Jack looked down at Michelle with a smile. She looked back up at him, her face flushed with happiness and excitement. It's hard to believe 12 weeks ago you didn't know your left from your right, Kizzy complimented. The music began to fade, and Jack spun Michelle away from him. Then, as Michelle spun back toward him, Jack knelt down on one knee. Michelle looked at him puzzled. The other couples stopped dancing and turned their attention to Jack and Michelle, standing in the center of the large room. Michelle Voisin, I love you with all my heart, Jack declared loudly and confidently. Will you marry me? He presented a stunning yellow gold ring adorned with a 1-carat diamond flanked by 4 smaller diamonds. Michelle stared in awe at the ring, then threw herself onto Jack, bringing him down to the floor as she kissed him passionately. Oh, Archie! She exclaimed with laughter. The other couples clapped and cheered, enjoying the joyful scene as Jack struggled to stand up again. I suppose that's a yes? Kizzy teased, as Michelle finally released Jack. And all of you are coming to our wedding, got it? Michelle declared, admiring her ring. Seriously, Dad? JJ joked when Jack shared the news. My stepmom's younger than me? Deidre pretended to be dismayed that she wouldn't be the baby of the family anymore. Mealy assured her that being a big sister would be fun. It's awesome, she explained. I get to stay up 15 minutes later because I'm the big sister. So, I get to stay up 15 minutes later than you? Deidre asked playfully. Yep, Mealy confirmed. Dad, why do they keep calling you Mr. Auchie? Percy inquired as they toured Jack's new house. JJ, Shauna holding their son Trey, Percy with his wife Addison, whose belly looked ready to pop at 8 months pregnant, Penelope with her partner Alyssa, and Deidre all turned to listen to the story. The first time I met Michelle, I called her Bubbles, Jack explained. Bubbles? Alyssa queried, her Cupid doll face creased with a smile. I don't know, she was just so lively and cheerful, and it just slipped out, Jack confessed. And then I discovered his middle name is Archibald, Michelle chimed in, squeezing his hand. And he's a huge Saints fan, Penelope nodded in understanding. Archie Manning is still the greatest quarterback the Saints ever had, JJ, Percy, and Penelope echoed what they'd heard all their lives, while Mealy and Mandy showed their new older siblings the stakes marking where their swimming pool would be dug. Deidre sidled up to her father. Sorry, Dad, I accidentally let it slip that you and Michelle are getting married next Saturday, Deidre admitted. Honey, so what? I'm not hiding it from your mother, Jack shrugged. He smiled as Mealy assured Shauna that she'd teach Trey how to swim. Well, she got kind of upset, Deidre added. It's her own darn fault, Jack said. She's the one to blame.